Well, in Sudan, hundreds of demonstrators are calling for the military to seize power. This is the country grapples with a deepening political crisis. Pro-military demonstrators gathered in front of the presidential palace in Khartoum on Saturday. Many chanted slogans describing the downfall of the transitional government. Military and civilian groups have been sharing power in Sudan since the toppling of a longtime President Omar al-Bashir back in 2019. However, following a failed coup attempt in September, military leaders have been demanding reform to the Forces of Freedom and Change coalition, as well as a civilian cabinet. Civilian leaders have in turn accused the army of aiming to grab power. Pro-civilian groups are now calling for protests to be held later this week.
We came here to bring back the revolution to its initial path, to its motto of peace, freedom and justice. Sudan is big enough for everyone, without one small group taking advantage over the rest. This is what we came to say. We came to say that this should be the priorities of the new government. We hope that today we have a technocratic government, not a government of establishments or parties.
We are behind the army and behind Burhan. There is no one but the army. The army is what we love, and it's what makes us feel safe. The army is able. They are able to protect the country and to lead it properly. When someone is afraid, they go and hide. But the only place we have to hide is behind these armed forces.
Well, Naba Muhyiddin is in Sudan for us and should join us for the latest from the capital, Khartoum. Naba, thank you so much for speaking to us. More protests are expected later on today. What is the situation there at the moment?
The situation now, more people are coming and joining the protest from other states. They are blocking some roads like the Palace Avenue and some roads around the military headquarters. Till now, the executive body in the government, they didn't say anything. No statement was issued, and the military itself, they didn't say anything about it. But the pro-democracy groups that back the protest against the ousted President Omar al-Bashir, they refuse this protest, and they are calling for protest in the 21st against this protest, because they think this is against the December revolution goals, because the protesters of today and yesterday, they call for the military to take the power, which is not the constitutional draft. The constitutional draft say the military should hand over the power to the civilians. It's a power sharing agreement, not a military to take over the rule. So there is new protest calling for the military to stick with the constitutional draft and to hand over the power to the civilians. So now the situation is chaotic. Some people call for the military to take it over, and some people are refusing what the protest, today's protest and yesterday's protest calling for.
Thank you so much for all that. Naba Muhyiddin speaking to us from Khartoum in Sudan. Well, joining me now from Rwanda is David Otta Andele. We're staying with that story from Sudan. He is the director for Geneva Center for African Security and Strategic Studies. Thank you so much for joining us, David. Sudan's traditional government is working within a very tight schedule towards a return to civilian rule. How are the divisions being experienced now likely to affect the country's path to free and fair elections?
I think tremendously, Hannah. I think what we're seeing now is a very strange situation happening in Sudan. I mean, it's very normal to see protesters calling and condemning, a military coup. And we've also seen protesters celebrating military coup. But this is, almost very rare to see protesters calling for the military to take over from the transitional government. So it gives you an indication that the country is being pulled apart. There's a power struggle that will have a tremendous impact on the upcoming election, which of course, according to the transitional government, is expected to be held in 2022. Again, it shows the level of chaos, which has come as a result of the what I call the legacy since the coup d'etat that was organized against longtime President Omar Bashir. Then the problem now is about consolidation of power by the transitional government, and there is a big struggle, which no doubt is going to have a tremendous impact on, the upcoming election, since the country is divided between those who are pro-military regime and those who are pro-democratic regime.
And also, David, Sudan's Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok has released a roadmap to end what he described as the country's worst and most dangerous political crisis. David, what do you see as a way out of this impasse?
I think, first of all, the problem is that, the Prime Minister himself is not a neutral party, and he clearly admits that. Sudan now has different problems. One of that is its economic situation since, before and after the overthrow of Omar Bashir. The government is not, being able to consolidate the transitional government, and then that is also putting a lot of strain on the economy. We've seen some protests in the eastern part of Sudan, where the ports leading to South Sudan have been blocked, causing a lot of chaos in terms of the transportation of crude oil, and trucks have been blocked. So I think, the roadmap now is to be able to, consolidate the two sides, which, one side is supporting a pro-military regime, and the other side is saying that, they want a democratic system of governance. So consolidating both sides would be one of the major issues that needs to be dealt with, but also making sure that the Bedouin tribes, that occupy the eastern part of the country, are also dealt with in a way that, they would stop advocating for blocking of the economic system. So there's a lot to be done, but I think again, it's a battle between those who are in support of a military and those who are in support of democracy.
David, thank you so much for joining us in Africa Live. David Otto-Ndele, Director for the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategic Studies.